Ko to the cloud. Beautiful. So welcome to our wonderful tutorial week 2. I feel like I'm ahead. I'm like 1 week ahead since having orientation week and then having that preview week. I feel like we're further than what we should be, which is insane, but that's great. So again, today I'm going to go through some information around that module 2, having some great discussions. And then we'll talk about the assignment. Again, I always start with I don't like to do information overload, especially with the Indigenous knowledges, because I don't want that to be overwhelming. So please feel free and ask any questions that you may have. So just acknowledging that I am on the beautiful Yugambeh country today and pay my respects to elders past and present and any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today or watching the recording. So Module 2 was all around addressing that contact history, invasion, settlement, and impact on Indigenous Australians, looking at a bit of policies and practices around stolen generation. It didn't go into too much detail. As I say, that could be a whole 6-week unit in itself. So just trying to get some important information out there, and then again in your own time you can unpack that. I do recommend, if you have any options in choosing units, definitely choose any units from Guinea. They've got some wonderful Indigenous studies that they offer to broaden your knowledge as well. But maybe I should look at education, having another Indigenous unit as an option to unpack more, because I know some people are so interested. So closing the gap, we've got that Commonwealth Closing the Gap 2024 annual report to be implemented in 2025. So this historic Closing the Gap agreement between federal and state government was working together to really try and make a difference between the outcomes of Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. So looking at that shorter life expectancy, looking at higher rates of infant mortality, poorer health, malnutrition, chronic diseases, suicidal rates, higher rates in incarceration, and trying to boost up education and employment. The word closing the gap, some people love it, some people don't. I personally hate the word closing the gap. I think everyone's trying their best, especially Indigenous people are trying their best to be where they can be. I really struggled with a company I was working for where we're putting our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students into boarding schools. A lot of the boarding schools are really struggling that their kids or our students that were going there were not at that NAPLAN level of where they should be, because obviously they're boarding schools with very prestigious. So what they did was the schools, or some of the schools, called home our parents and said, I think your child should sit out. We don't want them to feel stressed about NAPLAN, purely so their NAPLAN results were not going to be counted into the school to bring the school down. It's still happening. That happened a year and a half ago. And it's still happening. So I hate that whole closing the gap. We want to try and really help Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, but yet there's schools out there that are trying to sit students out so their numbers don't get brought down. And a lot of this closing the gap with the education is looking at those NAPLAN results. So I always say it is a win when you're working with individual students to get them to achieve their personal best. That's a win to me. But with these targets and goals that were put in place, there's still a large gap that they say, and they haven't reached all their targets. I did have a quick look, and I did pop a link here if you ever want to have a browse about what they are wanting to implement, what they have implemented already. They have a few goals that should be done by December 2025, so next month. That is nowhere near the target. But it's just really interesting, and sometimes that can feel quite forceful on teachers looking at that education and closing the gap. But I just say focus in your lane and help your students succeed the best they can. And if we can't move them further where everyone else should be, that's okay. You're trying your hardest, and so are our students. So this is an awesome storyline poster from Nessa. So it's Koori, Mari, Guri, and Palawa storylines. So all different Indigenous people. As you know, Koori people are down in New South Wales. They refer to themselves as Koori. You may have heard of the Koori Knockout, where all Indigenous, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in New South Wales gather together to play football. So these are just names that some people identify themselves as. But this is an excellent resource. You can also use this in your older years, great for discussions. They're really big display posters that you can order online. Stick them up. It looks like a rainbow serpent that are weaving through, and it tells different times and events in Australia. So I think that's also, hint, hint, if you're struggling a little bit, another great resource to use. You can connect that to any learning outcome or just having something visible within your classroom. So I have taken little snippets from the posters just to break down what you may see. And again, if you are talking about these topics with any of your students, particularly for your older years, this is when you start talking about your trauma-informed practice, just making sure everyone's okay in the classroom and everyone feels safe and have that room to leave and come back if they feel uncomfortable. So at the beginning of that poster, it starts off with that myth of terra nullius, that it was no man's land and that the country or Australia now was possessed by Great Britain. Then it moves into your frontier wars, 1825 to 1870, looking at how that big resistance happened and the invasion continues. That links to the video I showed in tutorial 1 from the University of Newcastle, where they show that snippet of the frontier wars happening. That could also be a great link if I was in the older years, looking at this map and then probably watching that video from University of Newcastle of the map. You could link that easily. Then it goes into the protection in 1870 to 1914. So many Kooris begin to live in large communities. So as we say, Kooris is Indigenous people in New South Wales, being removed from physical threat. Then in 1914 to 1945, it looks at separation. Again, on this poster, it breaks down way much more detail than what I've taken from here. Then it goes into 1945 reassertion, so looking at legislations discriminating against Kooris, and how a lot of Aboriginal people continue to suffer poor health, education and housing. 1971 is the We Are Strong, so positive changes to help Kooris to take part in managing their own countries, their own land and land rights. And then challenges continue into 1995. So looking at that supporting for reconciliation growing, and looking at limits placed on the Native Title Claims and Native Title Act with that Mabo. And then the new millennium, so the stolen generation being widely discussed, the Federal Parliament apology in 2008, and then it goes into how Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are being more featured in films and TV and art. So I think these are great topic conversations with students in your older years. Again, I wouldn't be having this in your primary or early childhood centre. But again, as a teacher and for professional development and learning, I think this is really important for you as a teacher to have, especially coming out with all the new curriculum. So in there, in that big, beautiful poster, it talks about assimilation and the impact that had. So the assimilation policy, where that Indigenous Australians could enjoy the same standard as living as white Australians. However, that wasn't the case. So with that, they were really trying to breed out Indigenous peoples, and in bold down the bottom, it talks about this period of colonisation having such a large effect in lives and perceptions of Aboriginal people and the struggle that it has taken. Jumping into the 1967 referendum was where, so it starts in 1962 with the passing of the Commonwealth Electoral Act. However, it wasn't until 1967 with the referendum that the Commonwealth was able to create laws for Aboriginal Australians and count people in the national census, again, which I said last week is so wild. 1967, they weren't counted as people before then. And then it jumps into over 90% of Australians voted yes. That happened not too long ago as well. So just a bit of background information looking at those policies and the impact it has. I don't go at all into much detail, but I do bring it up just to have a little bit of knowledge of where we're coming from and why we're looking at embedding Aboriginal perspectives into the classroom. I came across this yesterday and I was so intrigued that I went, we have to do this in the tutorial. So this is an amazing interactive documentary by SBS. And if I was in the older years, this is for year 12. Perhaps you could do year 11 as well. It's a great interactive tool. Students can go anywhere in the room on their laptops and do this interactive documentary. And then these are the questions that we would ask the students, but I'll ask you guys these questions. So sit back. I'm going to open this interactive documentary. What's interactive about it is it tells you when to click, and when you click a button, words wash away. So it does try and keep students engaged more. So this is about Gari, formerly known as Fraser Island. So this is the interactive. I'll make it a little bit bigger. What's it going to? Okay.
Here, time isn't linear. The present and past overlap. Since the beginning of time, the Butchulla people have lived on our island. When a stranger appeared in 1836, she was just a minute grain of sand to us. Nothing compared to the generations that were here before. But that one grain of sand left a legacy. Eliza Fraser's story will hook you in. It's about a damsel in distress. It's full of tension and suspense and sexual titillation. But it's a fabrication.
This is a plain, unvarnished tale, exaggerating nothing but recording truly and faithfully the events beginning on the 24th day of May, 1836. It was on a voyage due for Liverpool that a mighty storm came. The sea indeed run mountains high, when we struck with great violence upon a hidden reef. The ship was lost. My husband, 2 crewmen, and I quit the wreck and put to sea. Several days later, about midnight, we were driven onto an unknown island, inhabited by a savage race of people. Drenched with the sea and nearly famished with hunger and cold, we anxiously awaited the return of morning.
I'm Fiona Foley, a member of the Wandunna clan of the Butchulla Nation. Our land covers all of Fraser Island, from the mouth of the Burrum River in the north, west to Bopple Mountain, to Double Island Point and Tin Can Bay in the south. We call this island Gari. I've loved this place since I was a child, from the rainforest to the freshwater lakes, the eucalyptus forests and the Banksia swamps. Of course it seems strange to Eliza Fraser. She would have been confronted by everything she saw. But can you imagine the anxiety my ancestors felt when they first saw Eliza? The longer they stayed on the beach, the more tensions grew. Were the strangers coming in peace or looking for conflict? My people knew Eliza couldn't survive alone, so they took her in.
At dawn, The frightful-looking savages approached us with the ferocity of wild beasts, all armed with knives or dirks and long spears. They made prisoner of my husband, leaving me alone on the beach. The squaws commenced close examination of my person, then began beating and maiming me with clubs and encouraging their children to pinch me, to pull my hair and throw dirt into my face and eyes. They then put into my arms one of the most deformed and ugly-looking brats that my eyes ever beheld. I was conducted to one of their villages, where almost daily I received the most harsh and cruel treatment, being seldom allowed sufficient food to satisfy the cravings of nature. The fishing of the natives failing them, they began to suffer so much for the want of food that they were compelled to seek for it on another part of the island. They traversed a path thickly covered with briars and low brush, which rendered the traveling extremely painful. I became so much exhausted as to be obliged to drop my burden. My mistress became greatly enraged, and gnashing her teeth, seized me by the throat until I became nearly strangled.
Eliza was vulnerable, and the women wanted to help her. She was sunburned, so they covered her in ash and animal fat to soothe her skin and protect her from the mosquitoes and flies. Eliza saw it as an act of aggression, but really, it was an act of kindness. They provided shelter, they provided water. Without the help of the butler, Eliza would have perished. To survive, everyone had to pitch in and help. In bachelor society, women and men did separate tasks. So Eliza stayed with the women. She had to collect wood. She didn't like that. And she had to look after the children. She didn't like that either. She called it being a slave of the slaves. But in fact, looking after children and tending to the fire were the two easiest jobs. Aboriginal women set a cracking pace. When they're out hunting and gathering food, Eliza wouldn't have been able to keep up.
About the middle of the day, we reached a cluster of inhabited huts of another clan of savages, where, to my inexpressible joy, I once more met with my husband after a separation of 3 weeks. Alas, what a melancholy spectacle did his emaciated body present. His strength failed so much as to render him unable to obey the commands of his savage taskmasters. A spear was thrust into his body in my presence, which caused me in a fit to exclaim, "Jesus of Nazareth, I can endure this no longer." A few moments before he expired, he retained his senses and uttered, "Eliza, I am gone."
First, Eliza wrote that her husband died from illness. Then later she said he was speared. She knew that the more she dramatized the story, the more attention she'd get, until the story outgrew her. It was a media sensation, published in newspapers across the world. And the truth got lost. The stories Eliza told about beasts and savages fed the negative stereotypes of Aboriginal people. Her words inflamed the colonial prejudices that would be used down the track to justify the killing and dispossession of Aboriginal people. Her words took our humanity away.
The reader may imagine how great must have been my surprise, as well as disgust, to be visited by one of the most ugly and frightful-looking Indians my eyes ever beheld, with proposals that as I had lost my mate, I should become his squaw. Oh, do me the kindness either to stab me to the heart or knock me on the head with a tomahawk. Death by his hands would have been far preferable than becoming his companion. He seized me by the shoulder and fiend-like forced me within the enclosure of his filthy cabin. But before he had time to accomplish his designs, the god of mercy interposed. 13 resolute young men arrived from Moreton Bay just in time to frustrate the designs of the savage brute. He took sudden flight, and I was hurried into a boat and rescued from one of the most alarming situations in which an unfortunate female could be placed. After my deliverance to Liverpool, when at night I lost myself in sleep, I frequently awoke, thinking myself still in the power of the savages, whose terrific yells I imagined I distinctly heard.
She came just for a few weeks. But after she left, the Butler people became invisible. She was just a grain of sand. Yet today the island bears her name. The tourism industry peddles her story. In 2014, our native title was recognised, but we still don't own the land. We can't build on it. We can't make decisions for it. We can't run our own tourism on it and tell our own history of it. We need you to let Eliza's words go. Let them wash away, out and over the horizon. I'd like you to call this place by its real name. Gowrie. Paradise.
Really fun and interactive tool. So each time a word did come up, you had to click and the ocean would come, or the sticks would come, or the lightning bolts would come. Again, that would be for your older years because sometimes that can be quite confronting. So the questions you would ask the student is, for some of us, this is new information. Why? And why do you think some aspects of Australian history are more well known than others? Does anyone want to answer?
Hi, Madison. It's Karen.
Hi, Karen.
I'd say a lot of things are kept out of history because it makes people feel, the majority of people feel more comfortable.
Yep.
Because it is only fairly recently that these things happened.
Yep.
And I guess people start taking it personally, like they might feel like people think they're responsible. So to make people feel comfortable, a lot of that stuff's left out. As an example, I just recently completed an Australian cultural history subject at uni, and then I did also a similar one 20 years ago, but it was called Aborigines and Settlers. And what was left out of that history subject 20 years ago was basically everything from an Indigenous person's point of view. So it's good now that the history is far more accurate and balanced, and sometimes that balance isn't balanced in that, bad things did occur, but it's good that that's included so that you get a much more balanced view of what actually happened rather than the view that makes you feel most comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was taken from the Healing Foundation. So as I said on the workshop, the Healing Foundation has so many lesson plans, and this is just a snippet, and then it gives you activities after to discuss with the children and what they can do and go and research and create posters. I think it's a really fun, interactive, especially living around here, knowing more information. And this is taken off one of the websites as well, getting more information around it. Why is it this name? So how to pronounce it, Gari, as the K is silent. The name change timeline. So from that video, it was saying sign up so we can change it. So obviously it has already changed. In 2021, the Queensland government started the process from Fraser Island to Gari, and getting the names changed right has been important, and who they've consulted with. And one of my big things that when I do these videos and show you all these resources, is to give you confidence to hopefully one day do it in your classroom. My whole unit, like Karen said, people feel scared or feel like they're being blamed. And that's one of my biggest things about this unit, is not making you feel that way, of just having conversations and learning and listening and then passing that forward, because blaming is just horrible, and that's not what it's about. It's just about learning. So all these hopefully resources you can kind of get to see, understand, and go, oh, I kind of feel confident in teaching these to students as well, because some of our younger students have so much minds to be molded and shaped and come from such innocence as well. So where did the name Fraser Island come from? And it's just a bit of a story. Again, this is from the website, so it is great information if you want to use these as resources as well, explaining around the local area. So they've kind of briefly brought that up in that beautiful poetry story about who came and who it was, Eliza Fraser, surviving on the island, and they were trying to help her, and then returning home, and how she remained in Britain and told her story. And then eventually they've changed the name to Gari. So again, certain little things like this. So wherever you are coming from, whether it's New South Wales, Victoria, up here on the Gold Coast, somewhere at the top of Australia, just doing slight little bits of research around the places, it really does help students connect to in that area, and they love it. Like, students love going, oh, I know the story that's happened over there. Yeah, it's really important. So if you can scan this QR code and then maybe tell me, how can understanding this history shape your role as a teacher in creating an inclusive and respectful learning environment? I can see some of you guys already typing from the QR code. Would anyone like to share as you're typing? I always say it's having just awareness, self-awareness, awareness of others. And I say this for all cultures, just not Indigenous Australian. Any culture is just having a strong understanding, being a person that you can listen, understand, share, reflect, support other students within your classroom. It always comes back to always reflecting on yourself as a teacher, and how can you be your best version as a teacher to support the students in your classroom. so many students do look up to as role models. It doesn't matter what year group you're teaching. It's important that we can try and make a change in any way, whether it's racism or supporting or bullying or anything like that. I think it's so important to have that self-awareness and respect for others as well. So we have this Mbatwa Education Declaration, which is in Alice Springs, where they've come together to create this declaration to support Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students in learning. So I'm going to show this video. And then I'm going to ask the question, why is this important to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples?
Citizens, that they are valued, that we're recognised as having important language, culture, kinship and history ties in this country, and that we are a source of knowledge and strength.
I'm Kyle Dowling with the Karma News. State and Territory Education Ministers were in Mbatwa Alice Springs last week for the signing of a new education declaration as part of a 10-yearly refresh of Australia's education system. Two main goals were outlined in the newly renamed Alice Springs Mbatwa Education Declaration: promote excellence and equity, and that all young Australians become confident and creative individuals who are active and informed members of the community.
We want to ensure that Australia has an education system that embraces the diversity of our country and supports all of our students culturally, socially and linguistically to achieve their goals and the goals of our country in having that strong future.
They've had input right across the country. We've had youth forums all over the country. I think that something the Alice Springs Mbatwa Education Declaration picks up is putting front and centre the acknowledgement of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures, knowledge and also the experiences of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, recognising it is a strength of First Nations people here in Australia, recognising it in our education system, as well as making sure our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students are not disadvantaged in their educational journeys.
As far as education goes, we're providing record funding into the Northern Territory. We've actually increased our funding into the Northern Territory and across every state and territory. We're putting an extra $20 billion into education right across Australia. That's my focus as Education Minister, making sure we continue to invest, we grow that investment. It'll be a $310 billion investment over the next decade.
So why do you think this specific declaration is important to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples? No answer is wrong.
To make them feel accepted and valued.
Yes.
Yes. So they try to promote equity and respect for diversity.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. What I love about it is everyone in this community had the primary school, local government, all chipping in to make this declaration. What I love about it is it's not, we're here to close the gap, but it's here just to highlight the positive aspects of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And what I always say is for them to reach their personal best or their personal goals. But I mean that for all students. As a teacher, I would have so many students that were below where they should be. And to me, I just found it a win if I could get Bob from reading level 2 to even a reading level 3 because he was so stoked and he was slowly moving. So to me, I just think anyone's personal best is the most important. A great declaration to also look at maybe weaving when you're discussing some topics of community engagement about how that has worked so well, and they're uplifting and bringing each other up. And like Marley said, it gives a say in the classroom, 100%. They see value, they're heard. And I think that was so sweet, that little choir at the end too, very special. So, Aboriginal education policies and frameworks, they're currently always changing, evolving, trying to fill those gaps to make us better teachers. So, if you are doing early childhood, I want you to scan that little QR code. If you're doing primary and high school, I want you to scan the other code. I'm not going to do in groups. I just want you to have a quick flick through of what it says. And just look at, is there anything or key elements in there that stand out to you? And looking at these policies or these strategies, how can this policy or strategy inform your teaching to help support Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students in your classroom? I'll give you about 5 minutes. Have a quick flick through. And then we'll come back together and just have a chat. Is anyone doing early childhood in this group? No. All right, awesome. So have a look at the primary and high school and then we'll have a chat and come back. More than welcome to turn your camera off if you like as you look through. I'll pause the recording. Resume the recording. So looking at this policy into action, this one gives you lots of suggested actions, links to documents. What would we do already if you're sitting in a school? This would be for your public school sitting. What are we doing already? What are we going to do? Looking at this document, how do you think this could inform your practice? The first one I did quite a lot. One day a week I had to sit there and look at the data meetings. I had to analyze Scout data, which is all the information of our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students in our school. And then I had to get all that data together and it goes off to the local board to then compare and contrast to other schools in that local area. A lot of data around it, which I'm not about students data all the time. So what can we do to inform our teaching pedagogy? Was there anything that stood out to you guys? I think it's things in here that you can think about, oh, am I doing this and how can I do this best? A lot of the resources that I show within these tutorials, you can absolutely use to hit these actions as well. So when it talks about teachers should know the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, it's not possible all the time. Some people don't identify, but I always go to the office and ask for a printout of who identifies within my class. From there, it talks about maintaining cultural identity. It gives you information of how you can do that. I would also talk about all of these activities that we do to enhance cultural identity, whether you're Indigenous or non-Indigenous. I think that's very powerful. Looking at ensures all students are provided an opportunity to develop a deeper understanding of Aboriginal histories and cultures. Again, this is everything that we're doing in this tutorial that you can weave throughout your teaching practice. Another hint, it says work with the AECG. So in New South Wales, there's an Aboriginal Education Consultative Group. If you're in a different state, I would be looking for any consultative group that can help with you, or you'd be looking at your Aboriginal community. In your area, you may even look at your local Aboriginal Land Council. There's people in there that can also assist. If you don't have an AECG or you don't know anyone in the community, I do suggest going out making connections. Then always go to one of the teachers within your school that may be an Aboriginal education officer who can help you make those links as well. Focusing on early intervention for your students through their learning. So that talks about engagement, attendance, high expectations. Everything that they say to do here, I say for all students' well-being. Always have high expectations from your students. They thrive and they thrive so much when you know you're telling them, I know you can do better than that. I believe in you. You can Do whatever you want. You are your own like you should be proud of yourself. That's one thing I always say. Again, it's linking back to not pushing students to reach those goals where they should be sitting at, but their personal goals. Personalized learning pathway plan. So looking at collaborating. Again, these are actually all little prompts as well that will help you with assignment 2. And it talks about how can you collaborate with your community and local parents. It gives you suggestions here as well. So all of these policies are things you probably realize you're not even doing, but you're doing it in your practice already. So it's good to always refer back to the policy and go, hey, I am always attending those. I know it sounds tokenistic, but you probably are always attending those celebrations and NAIDOC weeks. You're probably already doing your trying to create partnerships with your local community. You're probably already fostering identity within your classroom, but it's a good way to check in and see if you are doing it. Especially looking at this ongoing professional learning, if you ever want to keep going and learning, it gives you also places to go to. So, equality versus equity, defining the difference. Equity goes that extra step by recognizing that every individual is unique. Being equitable means accounting for varied circumstances and allocating the resources and opportunity for each person's needs. Put simply, equity means understanding that not everyone starts out in the same place and making adjustments for fairness. And I understand, especially in high school settings where you've got so many students coming and going, it is hard, but all you can do is try your best. And again, I know it sounds daunting when you've got that curriculum overhanging you. You can only do so much and you can only assist the best you can to make students reach those outcomes. So don't be afraid to change the content. If over there is doing an essay, you may just change something for the other group. So it's our role as our teachers to help our students overcome those educational gaps by assisting with their strengths. Always do strengths-based first. So cultural competency, and I speak about this in my diversity unit. Cultural competency is a lifelong journey. We're never going to be at the end of it. We're always learning, unlearning, relearning new things. It evolves so much. So teachers and school leaders must truly and wholeheartedly embed themselves into the journey. It's forever going. Karen.
I'm just going to say, Madison, you just mentioned getting a printout of who identifies as an Indigenous student at the school. I just finished placement and my mentor teacher showed me that on one school, you can click on each student and it will have on there if they identify as Indigenous, which was really great because it has their photo and everything, which is really...
That is perfect. Yeah, that is perfect.
And also if they're EALD or any other things that might be included, so that you can do that per each class on one school, which I thought was really amazing.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you, Karen. And I know some people are going to go, oh, I don't have time for that. But again, unfortunately, it stands out from what makes you the better teacher. If you're there just to work or you're there to really try and make a difference. So it will take effort, like you said, going into is it one school?
Yeah, one school.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to do that to mark the role, right?
Exactly.
So you're already there.
So an extra click doesn't hurt to have a real good look at who's in your class. Yeah, that's awesome. And then I always say it is lazy, but asking school staff for a printout. But I always say develop a really great relationship with the front desk staff and the SAS staff because you want them on your good side to support you. So always keep that in the back of your mind. But yeah, it's so simple to do and it really makes a big difference as well. So cultural competency, so important. You're never going to be amazing at it. We're always learning no matter you know, what we're doing. We're trying to make a long-lasting change for our students. And I unpack this within my EDUC6009 diversity. And what it is, I'm not going to do this activity, but there is those 4 points. So what does culturally competent teaching workforce look like? What does a teacher or school leader need to be culturally competent? What does cultural safety look like? And what might be some of the challenges or barriers? And this is something we as teachers will face day in and day out at different schools we may be teaching at. But what I love about this resource. And when I say resource, it's resource to support your professional development and your teaching pedagogy. It's there to assist you when you don't know what to do or what can you do within your school. So it talks about down the bottom here, where is it? It will have my dot points. Okay, so what does a culturally competent teaching workforce look like? It speaks about it, and it's something I always talk about. Teachers and school leaders need to challenge their own beliefs and behaviours and attitudes to critically reflect on how they value diversity. Hint, hint for assignment 2, when we're looking about, what have you learned as being a teacher to embed Aboriginal perspectives? What can you do when you're trying to connect with community? It always comes back to you as a teacher. Are you critically reflecting on you and your values and your beliefs? And what are you doing to go outside of that box? Then it further goes down. What does a teacher and school leader need to be culturally competent? It gives you information, consultation with Aboriginal students in your classroom, consultation with people outside of your classroom, school leadership, referring to them when you need assistance because you're not alone in this. You're not meant to know everything. What does cultural safety look like in schools? It gives you information about that. Cultural safety involves challenging current stereotypes. Again, looking at your self-reflection as a teacher. A really good document to refer to if you are writing about this. Always have that in the back of your mind, that cultural safety, when you are speaking about those hard topics around Indigenous perspectives. Which leads me into this trauma-informed practice. So if you are looking at any of those resources, even in that GARI resource, that could be quite overwhelming for people, might be overwhelming for people watching this now going, oh, that makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable, or I feel blamed, which is not the purpose of it. But your students may feel that way. So it's always important to have that trauma-informed practice to make it a safe space when you are implementing these activities. Now, again, this is from New South Wales Government. I know I favour New South Wales Government, but you can always use different types of state policies or legislations to help guide your practice. To me, I think that's so important that you're becoming aware of all different states' policies. Any of them will guide your practice. So it tells you about how can school care for staff who are supporting students impacted by trauma. What strategies can schools and teachers use to support students impacted by trauma, physical and emotional safety? So just make sure in any of your writing, if you're talking about a resource, that you're reflecting on or implementing trauma-informed practice to make sure everyone is emotionally and physically safe in the classroom. So our cross-curriculum. So the Australian curriculum sets consistent national standards that we absolutely love. And in that, we are looking towards addressing those 2 distinct needs in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander education, which is that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students are able to see themselves, their identities and their cultures, and that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and cross-cultural curriculum priority is designed for all students to engage. So everything that, again, I say that I show in these tutorials and workshops, they're hitting all of these outcomes within your curriculum. You find your curriculum or KLA content, it's meeting those outcomes. I've spoken about Jessica Stain so many times, curriculum. It is for your early year end, but she just speaks about here embedding Aboriginal perspectives. I think the more different videos I show you, I want it to become less daunting for you as a teacher.
Welcome to our workshop on embedding Aboriginal perspectives. My name's Jess Staines, I'm the Director of the curriculum. When we talk about embedding Aboriginal perspectives, one of the fears that educators have is that they worry about being offensive, tokenistic or stereotypical. We find that educators can sometimes suffer from a form of analysis paralysis, where they're so worried about doing the wrong thing that it has such a debilitating effect that often they do nothing at all. When we talk about embedding Aboriginal perspectives, it is a multifaceted approach. So it is about sprinkling Aboriginal perspectives across your play spaces. So if you have Aboriginal artefacts and resources, that they're not a display item, but they're there functionally for children to play and engage with, instead of creating cultural corners where you have cultural items on display like a wing in a museum. I'm going to show you some practical examples of the different ways in which this can happen across multiple play spaces and age groups. All of the resources and tabletop experiences that you have, it doesn't matter how aesthetically pleasing they are. To me, that is all window dressing if you don't intrinsically understand and value the importance of the work that you are doing. When I first began teaching in early childhood, some of the experiences that I provided to children was, needless to say, more of a tourist approach. Knowing about your culture and knowing how to translate that into an early learning context are two very separate things. In time, I grew my program and my pedagogy and practice to be more holistic and strike that balance between including traditional, contemporary, urban, regional and local perspectives. It is to strike that balance and to make sure it's play-based across all age groups and not only during significant dates and events.
I'm just always coming back to your teaching pedagogy. And when we say pedagogy is your teaching style, what are you doing? What are you changing in your practice to better assist students in learning? And it changes all the time. What you might do in your first year is going to be probably different in your second year, and you evolve and change. So our access guideline for the assignment, so making sure, yes, you can look at this triangle, which will help you in writing, looking at, is it by mob, is it with mob, is it for mob? If those two down the bottom, about mob and against mob, obviously you're not going to be using those resources. Like someone asked about using a book that was written not by an Indigenous person, but I think maybe illustrated by an Indigenous person. It was on this IATSIS website. It would have more information. So to me, that would be either developed with mob in consultation or for mob, developed on behalf, and looking at that consultation, which is totally fine, and acknowledging that as well in your writing. So making sure you are looking at these dot points. This is helping you understand who's developed it, who's participating in it, like I just said, in consultation with, how they positioned throughout. Is the terminology offensive or not? Is it a really old book or something that is so old that still uses really offensive words? But again, you might be looking at that book and then you're explaining the terminology that's in there. Back last week in my tutorial, how I was showing snippets of the Stolen Generation and breaking down how it said half-blood, half-caste, quadroon, speaking about how that was used in history, but saying that we don't use those words today. It's really offensive, in explaining that. Again, using your trauma-informed practice, having those conversations around it as well and acknowledging. So I showed this example for the Indigenous seasonal calendars that you can use. Now, this could be used in any science, mathematics, history, environment, writing. I always say as a teacher, look at your syllabus, especially for this assignment. If you are really struggling, you don't know how to connect it, I would find a dot point in the syllabus or your Australian curriculum that I would want to teach. And then I'd go, okay, how would I teach science involves making predictions and patterns? Then I start looking for my resource. That's how I can try and relate that it is hitting that outcome. It's educational value is really important. Again, it's completely up to you how you operate. Look at those websites. Again, this one, I don't think there's one here for Yugambeh, but there is one for just on the border of Tweed. There's lots, again, if you're going to use something that's not on your country, just making sure that you're explaining and you acknowledge that it's from somewhere else. I'm going to show you this video and I'm just going to ask you, what was the resource that was modeled by the elder? And how could you embed this resource authentically in your classroom? And when I say resource, I mean this video.
So our Yonga or our Yonga book orca. So this is a kangaroo coat or a cloak. So kangaroo was part of our food. Okay, we ate the kangaroo. But a lot of people think that we ate kangaroo all year round, but it's not the case. Because remember I said if we ate kangaroo all the time, what would happen? We would have no more kangaroos around. So we actually have to let the kangaroos breed a little bit so that we can have some more kangaroos. Kangaroo was only eaten in the winter time, so around about Makaroo. When we were at Bunuroo and Birak in Gerard, there wasn't any kangaroos there at the time because they were somewhere else in the bush. So what happened was, when we got to Makaroo, we all met up at the same place. So we all met up, the emus and the kangaroos. But this is where you're eating your red sauce, okay? A lot of the other seasons is a lot of your white meat. So you're having a lot of fish, and a lot of goanna and a lot of duck. So that's all your white meat. You've got some of these fruits here that are also white because that's what you make the bread with. But this is the part where you have your red meat. You have your red meat at this season because Makaroo is usually wet, it's cold, you want to keep your body nice and warm. So this is the appropriate time that you actually eat kangaroo. Everybody used to actually wear this. So it's not even about a girl's clothing, it's not even about a boy's clothing. Everybody used to wear one of these. And even if you were a single person, you would also have that as well. If you were someone of a high status, so just say I was a high lady, elder in the community, I would actually have 2 or 3 of these furs around me, not just one, because then everybody would see me as, oh, that's someone very powerful over there and she's a leader. So on this side here, Reese would actually put the fur, see the fur everybody, touching his skin around this time of year because it would keep him nice and warm, okay? He would actually rub a bit of oil on this side. The oil would actually make that water drip off. So it's a bit like a raincoat. So it'll keep him nice and dry. So he's got the fur touching his flesh. He's got the oil rubbed on this side. He doesn't need anything else, okay? So you guys wear raincoats during the winter? Yeah. Keep yourselves nice and dry? Well, some of you do, but some of you might love the rain as well. Well, we say that we invented the reversible jacket first. Because, guess what? Reese would still keep the same fur. He would turn it around. This time he's actually walking towards the coast. Now, would you guys want to wear a jumper on a 40-degree day? No, because it's just too hot. So Reese would turn it around, put the fur on the outside. He's down by the coast, keeps him nice and cool. He's rubbed he's rubbed the oil on this side. As he's walking around down by the coast, he's actually producing a bit of sweat. The late afternoon winds are blowing on him. So that actually creates a nice little cooling system under there for him. So that'll keep him nice and cool.
Who'd have thought that a small tablet could...
Such a fun little video and resource to use. That lady seems awesome. I'd love to have a cup of tea with her. She just seems like a person that just constantly puts a smile on your face. So using that resource, that video is so authentic because you're hearing information spoken by an Indigenous person. So I always say if you're playing that in your classroom, that's amazing because it's coming from the voice of an Indigenous person. And then you can expand on it and do more research in the classroom. Does anyone know what skin she was showing in the video?
Yeah, kangaroo.
Yes.
Skin.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was kangaroo skin. And there's lots of, I think Koori Curriculum does it, but there's lots of websites of Indigenous people that sell them that you can have in your classroom. So if I was in those primary years, I would absolutely have that. So after that video, I would have it and we can look at it, and just such a fun little artifact to use as well. But yes, having people like that come in is so important. Even if you did a lesson beforehand and then having her come in, if your school can afford to pay people to come in and share their time and knowledge, it's awesome. However, for this assessment, don't use someone to come in because I want to see how you as a teacher can do it. Again, don't freak out. I know some people may be using resources that I have shown here as an example, and that's okay because you've already some people have emailed me saying they already have it. It's okay. This is one from the Australian government, and it's all about Indigenous sports. Again, looking about more information. So here it tells me where these games were undertaken, like who created them. And it talks about different parts of Australia, again, explaining it, the age group, that you're using it for the appropriate age group, and it is in consultation with Indigenous people as well, so that's totally fine. This one I've done an example if you were going to use a painting. I think this is such a beautiful painting. If you're going to use this resource in a classroom, totally fine. I think it's awesome. This is when, as a teacher, I would explain, and I've taken a screenshot here as well, what this painting is about. So I would speak to the students going, we're going to unpack this painting. Who is it by? It's from South Australia. This painting uses traditional Aboriginal symbols, as we can see here. And then it gives us information about what the symbols are. So I would be talking about the U shape represents women sitting down. As you can see here, usually when you're sitting down and you stand back up, that's the shape it makes in the sand. Next to the woman is that digging stick, that one line that women would use. It talks about the traveling lines that we can see. The large elongated circle represents discarded head rings, so unpacking that information. Then I would look at the story and what is the story about. Again, it's totally okay to use this because this is out in the public. You're not going to have, as I say, any bad juju for sharing this story, because obviously it has this person has given approval to share this, otherwise it wouldn't be out in public knowledge. And then from there, as it depends what year group you're doing, you can unpack this in any way in a lesson. So you could start to unpack different artists within your local area. You could unpack the different styles. You could create your own painting, but not mimicking this, but creating your own symbols. I would then perhaps even go away from that, going, okay, you're going to create your own story about, and you might give some guidance, go out and create a painting. I might even do an own interactive writing activity for literacy, create your own story. So there's lots of different ways you can do this instead of saying, hey, here's some sticks and you're going to do some dot painting. I'm just unpacking it, acknowledging the story, but we're not going to mimic it because this is something that's passed down through knowledge and cultural value. Here I'm going to show you some examples as well when you're feeling a little bit stuck looking for resources. So this is from the Queensland curriculum. Again, doesn't matter what state you're in, you can absolutely use these and then link them to your own syllabus outcomes, or in Victoria, using your own Victoria ACARA or Australian curriculum. I get confused because I'm so used to New South Wales. So this is the first link. So this one. And it gives you sample learning experiences, the description, and then a resource. So this one is maths as a story. It tells you what you can do, the description, and then it tells you a resource where to go. Maths involves creating symbols and putting them together. Here is a resource that you can use. Here's another one, Australian Aboriginal one-hand counting system. Here's a resource you can use. Spatial strategies, resource. I think I put make it count in the workshop. Measurement and geometry. So there's all different resources that are there for you. Again, for English, they do the same thing. You can choose your year level, prep or kindergarten. This goes up until year 10. And it gives you resources again. Curriculum, which I think I show in workshop 3 next week, about how you can use this as a resource as well within your classroom. But if you are feeling stuck and don't know where to go, here are all such amazing resources that you can embed, and it gives you links to your outcomes. And then here again, this is all down the side, mathematics, seasons, storytelling. Here it just gives you supporting authentic Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives in your curriculum planning. And then it gives you some resources and places to go to support you as well. So whenever you have time, go through, have a little click. Digital learnings. I believe someone popped this on the discussion board, which was very lovely. So all different types of resources out there. There's the Gembe map I showed in the first tutorial, which you can also use as a resource. Sorry if I'm overwhelming everyone with the amount of places to collect resources if you already have resources. But in future, just link these in your browser for when you do go out teaching or creating lesson plans. Another fantastic resource is your NITV. I just showed an example here. This is about in North Queensland, and it gives you information, videos. You can use this in the classroom, especially if you're feeling a little bit lost. I would go up here and then you can type in the local area that you're in. So Yugenbear, I'm going to search it. There is all different videos, reads, articles that relate to my local area. I might even do Dark and Young. That's down on the Central Coast. Here is some more information. So if you are feeling a little bit lost, linking to your local land, great tool as well. Has anyone heard of NITV before? So all of this is a branch under SBS, and it's all run by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, giving information about all Indigenous things, news, weather, sports, everything. So NITV is massive for the Indigenous community. They also have a TV channel under SBS on live TV as well, where they show movies. So NITV is very reputable. But yeah, feeling a little bit lost, chuck that on there. Also great for casual days if you're trying to find a video or having some downtime in your classroom. Lots of things you can relate to. So it's due in a week and a week and a half. Monday, week 4, 11:59. Please make sure you are using APA 7th referencing. For part 1 and part 2, they do go together for one resource, just clarifying that. If you do feel a little bit confused, please do look at those examples. They're there to help guide you. All right, I feel like I have lectured again, all of you, but any questions to help assist or anything that you would like to add?
Hi, Madison. I have a question. Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, sorry. About something you mentioned before, about creating a safe place in a classroom, in your classroom, when especially when discussing strong content like stolen generations, assimilation, and so on. So my question is especially if you know that you have students in your classroom who have Indigenous background, how would you handle that? Because I don't want them to feel hurt or, uncomfortable, because we're talking about very strong, sensitive topics. And so, yeah, how would you implement that? How would you handle this?
Great question. And that depends on the age group as well. So what you're going to do obviously is going to be so different to your older years to your younger years. But before I introduce any topic that I do with my students, I always start with, so we're going to be speaking about this, and then I speak about what it's going to be about. This may be upsetting, this may bother you, and I always say, and especially for my Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in this classroom, you are more than free or welcome to leave. If you would like to stop and add to what I'm talking about, you're more than welcome. So you give them that open communication. What year group are you doing?
Secondary school.
Yep.
So from let's say from year 9, year 10 maybe.
Yep. Yeah, awesome. So I know a lot of the older students, especially my Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students I worked with, they love to have a say. So I always start off with explaining what we're going to be talking about. And then I'd be saying, hey, if they're feeling comfortable, you've developed that relationship as well. You could say, hey, Sam, you are more than welcome to add any information or knowledge you would like to share. And you just stop and have those conversations. So instead of it like lecturing the lesson, that's more of an open conversation and discussion. allowing them to have a voice. And you'll get to know your students if they don't like to and they go, oh no, I'm totally fine. I don't know how to add to that. Or you've got vocal students. But yeah, having that open conversation before contributing and always saying, I am not the knowledge holder, or I'm still learning as well. I'm learning with you as we go, and we're here to have conversations about it. If I had an Aboriginal education officer at the school as well, I'd probably give him a heads up and say, I'm going to be talking about this. Do you mind being in the classroom maybe as well to help guide me with this, and we can bounce off it as well? But yeah, it's a great question. And if you're ever in that situation and you're out at schools, please feel free to email me because I can help assist. I love
Thank
coming
you.
out to schools. Or any
Beautiful,
questions
thanks.
that you have in the future, I'm more than happy to help as well. Karen.
I was wondering for the assessment, maybe I just didn't notice it is written there somewhere. Should we be doing the same like learning level or stage level for each, or we can do different ones?
Different ones. So you can do different stages for each three. So you might do art for your first resource, history for your second, and English for your third resource. Or you can just keep art for all three. It's completely up to you.
Okay, thank
And
you.
and age, completely up to you.
Yeah, okay, great, thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions that I can assist with?
I did have one more that I meant to ask just then. Should we be linking it like with the Australian curriculum website with the subject, like my KLA is visual arts. Should
Yep.
we be linking it in with that or referencing like
the syllabus, like the reference in the ACARA? Yeah. So if you end up so say if you choose a content outcome in the ACARA syllabus, just in text reference ACARA or the Australian curriculum. I always say if you choose a specific content to hit, it will help you with the educational value in part 2, because you will speak about why it's hitting those outcomes.
Yeah.
It helps you write. Yeah. Any other questions? If not, please feel free to stay around. You're more than welcome now to finish and decompress everything you've probably just heard and then get ready for your assignment. But please, I'm here to support. If you have any questions, please let me know. Pop it on discussion board. Workshop, I'm going to be unpacking lots more examples and lots more resources. Please don't feel overwhelmed if you've already got yours. Maybe look at next week's workshop as things that you can take away for your future classrooms. But be confident in what you're choosing and be confident as a future teacher. You've got it. But yeah, have a fabulous Wednesday, everyone. And I will see you all next Monday night.
Thanks a lot, Madison. Have a good one,
Thanks
everyone.
so much.
Bye.
See you guys.